So coach, as always, you've been busy, right? You've been
Very
out and
busy.
about? You caught up with Mike Quinn.
Yeah, I caught up with Mike Quinn, fantastic guy, two-time All-American at Yale, captain in 2016. Had a chance to interview him at my place, talked a little bit about the culture of Yale, Coach Shea, what he's looking for. I thought it was a great interview.
All right, let's check it out.
Chris Stewart here with my good buddy Mike Quinn. Mike was a two-time All-American at Yale, starting defenseman, captain in 2016. So with Yale playing Michigan out here, I thought it'd be a great opportunity to learn about Yale lacrosse. So Mike, I'm curious about the Yale culture that Coach Shea created there. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, Chris. So as Chris mentioned, I was a graduate of 2016, so I started school in 2012, and when I got to campus, we had come off of 2 Ivy League championships, and we were kind of beginning to break through on the national scene in terms of really being kind of well respected, I think. And what I experienced was a kind of growth and evolution of a player-driven culture, which Coach Shea, I think, instituted, and it was in large part driven by some leadership we had during the kind of 2010, 2011 senior classes, particularly guys like Brendan Gibson, and they kind of really drove home a culture of accountability and really dedication and commitment. And I think guys at a certain point got sick of bouncing out in the first round of the NCAA tournament and not really being kind of respected on a year in, year out basis. So as it kind of came to my time on campus, we really tried to continue to grow that culture and really earn respect, as we began to play more national powerhouses.
Nice. So what kind of student athlete was Coach Shea, and still is Coach Shea looking to recruit?
Yeah, so I've heard him speak about it. I can definitely speak to the players I played with, but it really is a blue collar type of mentality, and that doesn't necessarily have to tie with where someone's from, what region of the country, or what school they went to, public, private. I went to Chaminade. I'm from Long Island. I went to private school, and then I did a postgraduate year at the Hotchkiss School, so I went to 2 private schools. But it's really a mentality, a work ethic to never be satisfied. And I think the position that the team is in now, having won a national championship every year, being the stakes are higher, right? And the expectations are different. And I think as alumni, what makes us really proud, actually all alumni are incredibly proud of the success we've had, but particularly 2012 onwards, because we were part of this growth, is that the expectations are different. And when we got to campus, it was, and earlier on in the 2000s, it was kind of make the Ivy tournament. And then, anything beyond that was kind of house money.
Now it's winning national championship.
Exactly.
Like
and
the
now,
New England Patriots of college lacrosse.
Yeah. Well, it's really redefining the standard and redefining what it means to be successful. And having that mindset, that work ethic that shows in and day out in practice. It's an intensity. I think if you were to show up to one of the Yale practices.
So like a day in the life of a Yale lacrosse player is what? It's pretty intense, right?
Yeah, it's intense. It's school, it's lacrosse. So we, when I was a junior or senior, we had a guy, Thomas Newman, come onto the staff, a weight training coach, who really kind of evolved our strength and training program, and guys were making incredible, tremendous gains in the weight room between the summer they left and then when they got back to campus in the fall, guys putting on 15, 20 pounds of muscle. It was pretty incredible, the transformation. I think that kind of in lockstep with our growth, that was a big element that allowed us to push on to the national scene and compete, in these championship games and whatnot. But it's school, it's lacrosse, it's weight training in the off season, it's 3-4 days a week in the weight room, it's practices in the fall. A lot of practices are captain's practices. So the Ivy League has restrictions on how many practices you can have with a coach present in the fall. So I think it's 10 of those when I was there at least. So 10 coach-led practices, which kind of basically bookends your fall season. So you'll start your practices and they'll end with your scrimmages. But before that and after that, you have captains-led practices. So they're player-led. It's really scrimmages and different drills that the coaches want us to run. And I think that structure really allows the player-driven culture to kind of grow and metastasize in a very healthy way, because when we're out there and there are no coaches, there's no one else to keep us accountable.
Sorry, my kids are in the background, so I can see there.
but there's no one else to keep us accountable. And if we're not being tough on each other in the fall and accountable to each other, then we're not going to make the progress we want to make in the spring. So it's really, what you invest in is what you get out. And Shay has done a great job kind of shepherding that culture and really encouraging all of us to look inwards and find that our own reason why we want to be the best player we can and then the best team we can be, because you only have 4 years there. It's very finite, and it really was an incredible program to be part of.
Unbelievable. So Mike, tell me a little bit about the culture that Coach Shea created at Yale.
Yeah, so the culture that I think is ingrained in the program now, in my experience when I was on campus, it was kind of growing at the time. I think now that we've really won the national championship, it is a very player-driven culture, but it's very much so shepherded by Coach Shea.
Very cool.
And it is really a culture where guys hold themselves accountable to each other. In the fall, we're only allowed a certain amount of practices with Coach Shea, and the other practices are player-driven, player-led. So really, it kind of reinforces that mindset of each individual player to work hard and make sure that your teammates are working hard, because ultimately, what you're going to get out in the spring is what you put in the fall.
Fantastic. So tell me a little bit about the kind of player that Yale looks for.
Yeah, so I think Yale, I can speak to what I've heard from Coach Shea anecdotally as to the players I played with, but it's a blue-collar player, a player that has an intensity, a level of work ethic that is up to snuff, and a certain level of aggression on the lacrosse field. And I think those things, it doesn't matter where you're from, where you went to high school, East Coast, West Coast. I mean, I've seen players that I've played with and players that are on the team now from all different areas and backgrounds that embody that type of work ethic. And I think when things get tough, as they inevitably do, whether you're the number one team in the country, trying to week in and week out, defend that record, or you're in the fourth quarter of a one-goal game. I mean, you want to have teammates by your side and players on your field that are going to stick to one another, trust each other, and work as hard as they can.
That's exciting. Yeah. Mike, talk a little bit about a day in the life of a Yale lacrosse player. I think that people don't realize just how time-consuming it is to be a Division I athlete nowadays.
Yeah, it's a very time-consuming endeavor, playing I think any really division of college lacrosse, even more so Division I, and even more so Division I at an Ivy League school. I think there are an incredible number of demands on your time and your attention. First and foremost, being a student is in and of itself challenging at Yale. So there's only a certain window of the day you can take classes in. And you're waking up, you're lifting in the off season or in season. You're going to class, then you might be lifting again, you're going to practice. When you're out of practice, you got to get there an hour early because you have to watch film. Then you practice, then you may have another hour of film after practice, then you go home, then you have homework to do. So there are a lot of time commitments, and it's never easy, but it is incredibly rewarding. And I think over my time there and the time of my classmates, you really develop a skill and time prioritization that for me has kind of taken I've taken that with me into the real world.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. Back to you, Chopper.